When one wants to supersede a superior power, one's own inferior power becomes ludicrous. Just as the global in the daytime and snow at night had no value, Brahma's mystic power became worthless in the presence of Krishna. For greater mystic power condemns inferior mystic power. On a dark night, the darkness produced by snow has no meaning. The global appears very important at night, but in the daytime its glow has no value. Whatever little value it has is lost. Similarly, Brahma became insignificant in the presence of Krishna's mystic power. Krishna's Maya was not diminished in value, but Brahma's Maya was condemned. Therefore, one should not try to exhibit one's insignificant providence before a greater power. Text 46. Kama Sadeva Sapala Asheto Jasidakshana Natrishan Yakanashama Translation of the book. Then, while Lord Brahma looked on, all the cows and the boys tending them immediately appeared to have complexions of the color of bluish red clouds, and to be dressed in yellow silken garments. While Brahma was contemplating, all the cows and cow boys immediately transformed into Vishnu, having bluish complexions and wearing yellow garments. Brahma was contemplating his own power and the immense unlimited power of Krishna. But before he could come to a conclusion, he saw this immediate transformation. And also got another devotee that when you're given the opportunity to glorify the Bhagavatam, you should rather hold hands because you get purified. So I'm in a bit of a quandary because on one hand I have no purification, and on the other hand, someone told me that this is the way to get purification. So I'm hoping that this whole experience has turned out to be a positive one where I learn something and develop some purification by attempting to speak on the Bhagavatam. in one of his commentaries on the Bhagavatam, I believe it's Jupiter's one, he quotes a particular verse, and in this verse it's explained that the person is speaking and saying that I have no qualification whatsoever, I have no purity whatsoever, but I'm hoping that by speaking on the Bhagavatam, I can at least make the devotees laugh. And I'm making the devotees laugh, I will at least achieve the pious activity of pleasing the Vaishnavas in some sort of way. So I'm hoping that at the very least, even if I am doing a fool of myself here, there will still be a positive result because the devotees will be happy. And that's the goal I want to make. So this particular section of the Bhagavatam is a very important section. Ultimately, we know that all sections of the Bhagavatam and all sections of the scriptures are important. To guide the living entities throughout the challenges in this material world, right? So one devotee described that Shastra is just like a map, right? And just like a map tells you where you are, where you need to go, the scriptures also do the same thing. So within the scripture, we learn, we get information about the nature of this material world, the nature of our conditioning, the nature of the spiritual world. So this, we get the Sambandha in the scriptures, and we also get the Avidya, how to overcome that conditioned nature, how to navigate the challenges of the material world in a way that we can eventually, when we leave our body, enter the spiritual realm. And also the perfection, which is the prayojana, love of God, is also described. So the way Krishna gives this information, the way Krishna gives this education through scripture is through pastimes. And these pastimes are supposed to be very educational. And this particular pastime is a very educational pastime, but it's also very important because of the person who's involved in this pastime, right? So it's just like you have a newspaper and there's a scandal in the newspaper. Normally newspapers, they contain a lot of trivial and mundane information, but sometimes some of that information catches people's attention because of the person involved. When there's a scandal involving a high-profile celebrity, everyone wants to hear, everyone wants to know, everyone is interested because of this is a great person, right? So in the same way, this particular pastime is involving a great personality, Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma is a dearmost devotee of the Supreme Lord, Adi Kavi, the original. And he's the head of our Sampradaya. He is also the personality who led the demigods to Lord Vishnu and offered prayers to Lord Vishnu when it was time to invite the Supreme Lord to come and assist them before the advent of Lord Krishna. He's the person who led the prayers, the Stuti Garbha, when Devaki and Vasudeva were stuck in prison, Kamsa's prison. So he's not an ordinary person, he's a great personality. But here in this particular pastime, Krishna puts Lord Brahma in a precarious situation with the intention of, first of all, catching our attention, right? What's Brahma up to? And also teaching us a few valuable lessons, right? And some of these lessons are discussed in the purport here, and some of these lessons are also implicit, and I've, by the mercy of the spiritual master, was able to glean them from this particular text, and I would like to share them with you, and hopefully you may find them interesting, and you may also add some of your insight. So the first thing, which is quite obvious here in this particular pastime, is, from my perspective, is the danger of trying to assess Krishna's position using one's mundane understanding, right? Using one's speculative power to try to understand Krishna's position is very detrimental and very dangerous. We see here that Lord Brahma, after Krishna had killed the demon Aghasur and was picnicking on the banks of the Yamuna with the cowherd boys, Krishna, under the influence of Yogamaya, was engaging with the cowherd boys in a way which appeared to be very frivolous and not, according to Lord Brahma, God-like. Right? It's explained in the pastime how it happened is that
The cowherd boys will be sharing the lunch, the meal with each other. One of them would take up kachori, I believe, and then take out everything within that kachori and then replace it with flowers or grass and then feed the other person. And then there's also a description of how Madhu Mangal had brought with him for his meal, he brought some buttermilk. But this buttermilk was not as fresh as he wanted it to be. So he felt, if I drink this here, Krishna will take it from me, because Krishna likes to grab our food from us, right? Because that's Krishna's nature. He likes to play with his friends. So then Madhu Mangal decided that he's going to withdraw from the group, go a little further away from the group so that he can drink this milk before it goes off, and at the same time won't have to share with Krishna, because he doesn't want to share something which is not fresh with Krishna. So Madhu Mangal snuck away from the group and he was hiding, drinking his milk. And then Krishna, at that time, Krishna started to wonder, where is Madhu Mangal? So Krishna was looking around and he noticed Madhu Mangal at a distance. And he realized what Madhu Mangal was doing. He was just drinking something, keeping it all to himself. So Krishna got a bit upset and he started running towards Madhu Mangal to grab the buttermilk from his hand. So Madhu Mangal saw Krishna coming, and immediately he put it all in his mouth and took a big gulp, hoping to swallow it very quickly before Krishna would catch him. But unfortunately for him, there was so much buttermilk, he couldn't do it in one go, otherwise he would suffocate or something. So he ended up with some puffed cheeks with the milk inside. And then Krishna saw him, Krishna came running, and he was hoping, okay, at least it's in my mouth, Krishna won't do anything. But we know Krishna is a joker. So Krishna basically slapped Madhu Mangal's cheeks, and the buttermilk just came out of his mouth, and he was splashing all over the place, and it landed on Krishna also. So then someone looking at that would be bewildered already, thinking, is this boy supposed to be God? Right? If God can have whatever he wants, why does he need to steal buttermilk from this cowherd boy? And why does he need to be so desperate for buttermilk that he has to act in such a way as to slap his cheeks in order to get that milk out of his mouth? Then the milk splashed on Lord Krishna's body, and Krishna didn't stop there. He proceeded to get as much of the milk off his own body and eat it. So he was getting the milk that came from Madhu Mangal's mouth, landed on his own body, and then started taking it off and then licking his hand. So Lord Brahma obviously is looking at this and he's thinking, what is going on? Is this personality supposed to be the Supreme Lord? But because Lord Brahma was using a mundane understanding, he misunderstood the pastime. We understand that Krishna acts in ways that are unconventional due to the influence of Yoga Maya. Because he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, everybody worships him. And this worship and awe and reverence affects his experience of the sweetness and intimacy that comes from personal relationships. So therefore, he gets his Yoga Maya potency to cover him so that he forgets his position as God, and then he can enjoy with his friends. But one who's not trained, one who doesn't understand this, gets the wrong idea. So we see this, many people misjudge the pastimes of Lord Krishna. They wonder how Krishna can be God and at the same time be dancing in the forest with other people's wives. How God can steal, how God can run away from a battlefield, how God can instruct his devotees to cheat during a war, how God can perform all such activities. Because they don't have the substance, they don't understand the substance behind the pastimes. So Lord Brahma fell under this illusion in this particular occasion. And the result, as you can see, is that he decided to test Lord Krishna, and he eventually got smashed. So this is the first point that I derive from this particular pastime, is the danger of using one's mundane understanding and superimposing it on Krishna's pastime and trying to understand them with such thing. Because logic is limited, right? Krishna is referred to as translogical. There are generally two things, is logical and illogical. Logical is something that makes sense, right? It appeals to cognitive faculties, right? It makes sense. It's logical. Illogical is something that doesn't make any sense. But Krishna is translogical, in that he makes sense and he supersedes even our mundane logic, right? How does that work? Is that Krishna, he's supremely powerful, and mundane logic is only able to comprehend what is going on in this material world, right? It cannot comprehend the spiritual reality, because the spiritual reality is governed by achintya potencies, right? So whatever the Lord wants, the Lord can get anytime, however, right? There are rules that are governing this world, and those who live within this world experience this world with these rules in place. But the spiritual reality is a different and completely separate reality with a completely and different set of laws. And the basis of those laws is the pleasure of Krishna. And whatever Krishna wants to do, whatever Krishna wants to experience, the energies would arrange for him. Another example is given is that because the living entity is so minute, you can't understand the infinite, which is the Supreme Lord. So the example is given of an ant, right? You have an ant and then you have a human being. The ant cannot conceive of the human being unless the human being interacts with the ant, because the ant's field of perception is limited to his conception, to his body, which is minute. The Supreme Lord is greater than that. Right? So logic is useful to a certain extent, but when it comes to Krishna, it becomes useless. Right? Just like using a torch, you can use a torch, you can see in the dark, but you can't use the same torch to see the sun at nighttime. Right? You can try to shine the torch at nighttime trying to see. So the torch in one particular certain circumstances is useful, but in another set of circumstances is not useful. So why is this important for us as devotees? Is that as devotees, practicing devotees, we have not yet reached perfection of the process of devotional service. So we still have some of the material conditioning that we have carried with us through so many lifetimes lingering within our heart. So sometimes we analyze situations in the process of devotional service, but we look at it with a mundane consciousness, mundane conceptions, and this can lead to offenses even. Right? Offenses in dealing with devotees, offenses in dealing with the deity. Because if you look at the devotees with a mundane conception, there are so many flaws you can find. With the idiosyncrasies are very difficult to comprehend. Right? Devotees have different ways of looking at things that we may not be able to relate to. Right? But if we're not able to transcend that and understand that the essential, the most important aspect of that devotee's nature is the fact that he is decided to surrender to the Supreme Lord, then we will make offenses. And therefore it's explained that there are, when it comes to interacting with a spiritual reality or any type of reality, material reality, there's three things to take into consideration. There's the nature of that reality, right? Whether it's material or spiritual, and then there's our vision of that reality. So you can look at if you have something which is completely material, if you look at it with a material conception, then you will interact with it in a material way. So just like you have a body is made of matter, you look at the body with a material conception, which is to enjoy that body, then you become entangled in sense gratification and you suffer the reaction. Now if you have something which is material and you look at it with a spiritual consciousness, then what you get is purification. So for example, you have, let's say, the example of a cart, a simple bullock cart. It's material, but if you look at it with a spiritual understanding of how you can engage in the service of Krishna, then you use the cart for something like a Rath Yatra. And that conception, that perception of the cart becomes the source of your purification. And if you look at something spiritual in a spiritual way, we know what happens, you get ecstasy. But if you look at something spiritual in a material way, then you commit an offense, right? Just like it says that if you look at the deity as made only from stone matter, then such a consciousness is considered to be a hellish consciousness and you go to hell. So we have to adjust our conceptions, and by hearing and chanting and constantly reminding ourselves of who we're around. Right? Devotees are very special persons, and Krishna is a very special person. Otherwise, we'll fall into the same trap as Lord Brahma here. Then we'll make a mistake of thinking that Krishna is an ordinary person. Krishna is just an ordinary blue boy. One time I was distributing books in London, and I approached this lady and I was about to give her a Bhagavad Gita, and then as soon as she saw Krishna, I believe she must have been she was a former Hindu. A lot of times you get Hindu persons who've had bad experiences, sometimes because of the caste system, people misunderstanding the philosophy, they get mistreated. So then what happens is that they develop some kind of aversion to anything to do with spirituality, anything to do with Eastern philosophy. So she immediately pushed the Gita out of my hand, and then she said, "This Krishna? Why are you distributing books about Krishna? Krishna is a cheat." I'm like, "What do you mean he's a cheat? Krishna is just another person just like you and me, and all he's managed to do really is achieve perfection in yogic practice. And he's able to trick people and fool people into thinking he's God because he can perform such miracles. But actually Krishna is just an ordinary person." Right? So this is a Supreme Personality of Godhead, but because she's approached him with the wrong consciousness, she sees him as an ordinary person. And needless to state that she won't take the book, and because she won't take the book, she won't get access to the process of devotional service. So this consciousness stops people from approaching the process, and even those who are in the process can make offenses also because they don't have the right understanding. Right? So this is the first point. The second point that I got from this particular pastime is that in the practice of devotional service, it's important that we address any doubts and confusions we may have in a proper way. So here, this Lord Brahma here was confused. He was in doubt as to whether or not the personality he was looking at was the Supreme Lord. And this is completely understandable. Doubts are explained in the third canto of Bhagavatam by Lord Kapiladev to Mother Devahuti, that doubts are a function of the intelligence. That unless one has doubts, actually, one cannot take to the process of devotional service, because you need to doubt the material reality in order to take to the process of devotional service. So in that sense, doubts are useful, right? But the problem comes when those doubts are not addressed, and those doubts are constantly, what's the word? These doubts are aimed at spiritual authorities and not addressed appropriately. Then they become deep until a point where one loses complete faith in the process of devotional service. And here Lord Brahma, not having addressed these doubts appropriately, performed one of the most offensive activities that anyone could perform, which is to actually try to test the Supreme Lord, but separating the Supreme Lord from his cowherd friends and the calves that he was tending. Instead of assisting the pastimes of the Lord, which a devotee is supposed to do, Brahma was interfering with the pastime of the Lord because he was in a position where he didn't address his doubt appropriately. So this for me is a very important point, because sometimes in our society we have devotees who quote-unquote suffer in silence. One devotee refers to such devotees as wounded devotees. Wounded, just like you go to war and someone wounds you, wounded devotee. And he says that because they may be in your association, they may be chanting the holy name, but they're not 100% healthy. Just as someone is wounded, the body is functioning, but it's not functioning to the fullest potential because there is some kind of defect somewhere. Wounded devotees. So many devotees like that do not address any doubts and any confusions they have about the process of devotional service, and these linger until they become serious issues. The devotee once told me a story to illustrate this point, and this is a completely fictional anecdote. There is no Prabhupada pastime here. He said basically one time there was this man who ventured into a nature reserve. Nature reserves are just spot of land, like countryside, where protected by the government because the wildlife there is very, very rare. So in this nature reserve, this man was looking for a fox. He was hunting. Right? He wasn't supposed to be there, but he snuck into this nature reserve and he was looking for a fox. And he came across a fox. He wounded this fox. And as he was about to put the fox into his car and drive out, the park ranger turned up. So the person guarding the place turned up. And he asked him what he was doing here. What are you doing here? You're not supposed to be in this part of the reserve because this is not for public access, right? So what this man did, because the guard was coming, he put the fox inside his jacket because he didn't have any time. So he put the fox inside his jacket and then he hid it there. And as the guard was speaking to him, this fox was inside his jacket and the fox was wounded. Obviously a wounded animal trying to survive will do anything to survive. So this fox was inside his jacket and the guard was talking to him. He's praying and hoping that the guard will stop talking so he can put the thing and run away. As the fox was inside his jacket, the fox began chewing on his chest, right? But he couldn't open the jacket and throw away because then the guard would know that he's done something which is illegal and he'll get arrested. Either way, he's snookered. It's completely, it's a difficult situation. So as the guard was talking, he's hiding the fox is biting him, he's tolerating, he can't have choice because he'll go to jail. Eventually he ends up losing blood and then he collapses and dies. So this devotee says that this is basically the situation of devotees who have unaddressed confusions and doubts lingering. It's just like this man had his fox hiding in his jacket and he was ashamed for whatever reason. He was either ashamed, devotees are either ashamed or they feel like they will not be understood, and sometimes also it's just because the community does not value discussions and questions. A lot of the time, as I know for myself, as neophytes, our faith is very weak. So any challenges to our faith, we reject, we despise, we avoid. So sometimes we don't have the answers and we're not so sure of ourselves. And when someone comes to us with a particular query, a particular doubt, a particular question, we can shun them because their query and doubt actually challenges our notion and understanding and our level of faith. Then what happens is that that person, it happens often with too many devotees, then that person will develop this defense mechanism where they will no longer be open by discussing philosophy, about discussing queries, about discussing questions and doubts they may have about the process of devotional service. And then they keep it all hidden within, and it eats them up until one day they leave the process silently, they sneak away. So if you look at the people who oppose our movement, I mean, you're all senior devotees, you probably know a lot more than me, but from my experience, a lot of the time, the people who turn out to be our most fierce enemies are actually former devotees because they have the inside scoop. So when they're criticizing the movement, they know the philosophy, so they know how to use it against us. And a lot of times it's because they were not given the opportunity to discuss their questions. So this is the danger of not creating an environment where people can address their doubts appropriately. And on the side of the devotee with a doubt also, is that one needs to have the intelligence to approach the right person. Jiva Goswami explains in his Satsandarbhas that association needs to be had with devotees, but not just any devotee. The devotee needs to be a devotee with similar disposition. Swajati refers to, jati means caste. He needs to be someone of the same caste. This is a metaphorical caste. It means someone similar disposition as ourselves. So one may have a very analytical and intellectual disposition. And if they approach someone due to naivety or laziness, because sometimes it's also due to laziness. We don't do our homework appropriately to see if this person is the right person to speak to. Then they will get shunned by those people, or they will get a response that is not supportive and encouraging. And the mind will use that as an excuse. Oh, look, these devotees are not. They're not very nice. These devotees are not into discussing. These devotees are blind followers. You're the only person who's here trying to understand the absolute truth and analyze things as they should be analyzed. These are neophyte devotees. You should leave this process. You should move on, join another process or join another organization because they discuss this, they discuss that. But within the association of devotees, there are devotees who do discuss philosophy. There are devotees who are very intellectual. And if that's one's nature, and one should find such persons. Because unless and until one does, then one will have these doubts lingering, and they will affect one's practice. They become a wounded devotee, so they won't be fighting 100%. Just like someone who's nursing a wound can't give 100% in the fight against the material energy. So this is, for me, this is a very important point also here, that what Brahma did, he had a doubt, and instead of exploring that doubt with the right person, obviously this is a past time. Brahma didn't have the opportunity to. There was no. I don't think there was any Namhata program nearby or anything like that he could join and speak to someone. But for us, this is a lesson that, for me anyway, this is a lesson we can get from this. Because he didn't approach the right person, then he decided instead to test Krishna, and that was the worst thing he could have done. So, and final thing I got from this particular section is if you analyze this pastime, Lord Brahma made a mistake, right? But he redeemed himself later on by seeking the forgiveness of Krishna, and then Krishna forgave him. And not only did Krishna forgive him, Krishna also gave him the opportunity to take part in his pastimes as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Right? So we know that when Brahma approached Krishna seeking forgiveness, Krishna was happy. But Brahma felt that he committed such a major offense and he didn't want to do that again. And what he did is he came to Antadweep here and he worshipped Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared to him. And he sought the blessings of Lord Chaitanya and asked him to give him the opportunity to experience what it's like to be humbled. Of course, we know that Lord Chaitanya allowed him to enter his pastimes as Haridas Thakur. So this was a person who went from being a major offender. It's explained that between Lord Brahma and Lord Indra, Lord Brahma's offense was actually more severe than Lord Indra's, because Lord Indra, what Indra did is that Indra actually, although he sent rains and heavy waters towards Vrindavan, he kept the devotees together. He allowed the devotees to remain together. So his offense was not such a major one. But Brahma's offense was more severe because Brahma actually separated the devotees. Right? He separated the cowherd boys from Krishna. He caused a lot of disturbances in that sense. But here's Lord Brahma, that same person who, after praying to Krishna for forgiveness, was able to redeem himself and be given a higher position in another pastime. So for me, this is also important, because sometimes as devotees practicing Krishna consciousness, we make mistakes. And a lot of the time, the tendency is that if we're neophytes and we are motivated by false pride, where we think we should always be perfect and everything should be great, then we can start to develop a self-condemning attitude, right? To the point that we begin to think that the process of devotional service cannot work for us. And you get devotees like that who leave the movement as well, because they begin to doubt the power of the purification that comes from the process of devotional service. That it doesn't actually matter how fallen one is. If one makes a sincere attempt to re-establish themselves in the original position, Krishna will accept them again and wipe the slate clean. Because actually Krishna's love for us is not conditional on our purity. Actually, what our purity is only a prerequisite for our ability to experience Krishna's love, but Krishna's love is always there, regardless of what position we may be in, right? The most fallen person, the most degraded person can still achieve the mercy of Lord Krishna. So we know the pastime of Lord Chaitanya, or Jagai Madai. It's explained that there was no sinful activities they had performed. They had not performed. But even they got the mercy of the Supreme Lord. And they were forgiven of their offenses, and they were basically given the opportunity to redeem themselves, because the Lord, His love is unconditional. So for me, this particular point here in Lord Brahma's pastime, this particular pastime here is important, because this is a tendency I have, and it's a tendency I've also seen with other devotees. I know a devotee who left the association of devotees, and because he felt that he was too lusty to remain in the association of devotees, and he felt that the best place for him to be was in a completely other tradition, a completely other path. So he decided to become a Christian instead of a Vaishnava, because he felt that at least in Christianity he could engage in illicit sex. And as a devotee, because he had that attraction for the opposite sex and he couldn't control it, he couldn't practice devotional service. This, of course, we know is not the right understanding, because in the association of devotees, people can be in any position they can be. Like if one wants to engage in intimate association with the opposite sex, then one can accept a particular ashram. Krishna has made it purposely all inclusive, so that no one has any excuse to not take up to the process. Krishna has done that on purpose. And if you look in the scripture, there are so many personalities from whatever background in this particular canto itself. Putana, she approached Krishna with the intent of killing him, right? And she was a big demon. The last time I gave class here, I spoke about how she was so evil that even amongst Rakshasas, she was considered to be the lowest. Rakshasas are considered to be demons because they eat human beings. But Putana was the lowest of Rakshasas because she doesn't just eat any human being, she eats children. And Rakshasas don't eat children. Generally, they have standards. But Putana's standard was so low that she fell to that level where she would actually hunt children and eat them. But this same Putana, when she came to Krishna, she got so purified that she got the opportunity to enter the pastimes of Krishna as a nurse in the spiritual world. Krishna's nanny, spiritual world. Right? And this is a very exalted position. So there's a demoness who got access to that. And if you look at Prabhupada's pastimes as well, many devotees came from different places. Prabhupada said, I made hippies into happies, right? From whatever background it came from. If we look at our own life, we didn't just drop from the spiritual world. We had a whole history, a whole background. Like, I know my history. It will take a good 5 weeks to discuss how many degraded activities I performed in my past life, in my previous life. So, but still, we are here because the process is very purifying, right?
I have a question.
Yes, Maharaj.
My question is that I would say that Indra was more sinful than Brahma, because Indra tried to kill the people. His inundation he didn't just, maybe he didn't separate them, but his intention was to kill them. So that, Brahma wasn't trying to kill anybody, he just separated them for a moment. But Indra came with the intention of trying to kill them all. everybody. So
that's a valid point.
Whose opinion is it that Brahma is more, who said this? Is this your opinion or is this from Acharya?
No, this is I've heard this shared by a senior devotee. It might, I've heard this opinion shared by a senior devotee. I didn't just concoct it. I'll try not to concoct anyway. Again, it could be it might be flawed, as it might be his flawed opinion. But I think he was just trying to make the point, a particular point there. But again, these points have their limitations. So depending on this particular circumstance, you can look at it from different angles, of course. So from that angle, the point you're making is definitely very valid. I'm hoping that the point I was making was valid, even though you were able to expertly dismantle it. But I was just trying to make a particular point. What is your understanding, Maharaj? Would you like to share? What is your understanding? What do you think? What is your understanding? Was I?
Well, like I said, I thought Indra was more sinful than Brahma. You know, I mean, we see afterwards, after the offense, you know, when Indra comes to offer apologies to Krishna, just, you know, he didn't even, you know, totally neglected him, ignored him. When Brahma came, you know, Krishna, you know, when Brahma come, but when Indra comes to offer prayers, Krishna was late, and that's why Indra had to go to Shirabi Kunj.
Good point. Anyone like to add anything else?
No, you didn't pull it out of thin air. The acharyas do say that.
Okay.
They do say it's worse than death, being separated from the Lord, or the Lord being separated from the devotees.
Wow.
It's more painful than death. In Indra, even though his motive was to kill him, what was the result? It's just the same lines as Putana. She pleased him. Krishna was in ecstasy. He was with everybody, his whole family, the whole village for 7 days and nights, and everybody was enjoying so many rasas and loving reciprocations. And if you read the pastimes again, you'll see that Lord Krishna neglected Brahma than he did Indra. Indra, he accepted his apology, but Krishna just shined Brahma on, because he wasn't too happy. I mean, Lord Balaram even became angry at his younger brother for 5 days and wouldn't go out and play with him, because you didn't tell me that you became all the calves and the cows, because Lord Brahma had separated them. And to save him from the pain of separation, he enacted the pastime. I'll read it and get back with you, Maharaj.
It's amazing. I mean, I didn't know that. Because obviously the devotee who said it, I have a great deal of trust in his philosophical understanding, so I felt it was okay to repeat it. But I didn't have any way to substantiate it anymore beyond the fact that he said it. So it was good to hear that Acharyas also explained. But I guess it's just different angles, you know, there's different ways of looking. There's so much nectar there.
Hare Krishna, one question from online. A devotee named Sitala Devidasa is asking, she heard from a senior devotee that we even don't have the qualification to commit offenses. Can you nicely explain this point? We are so fallen, we don't even have the qualification to commit any offenses. How to understand this?
Maharaj, would you like to add your... So actually committing an offense is a great, that's actually... I guess whoever said that is just speaking, it's bhava. They're sharing a particular mood, you know. It's like, I am so insignificant and I need Krishna to do anything. Even for me to do something sinful, I need Krishna's help. That's one way you could try to look at that, I guess. That's how I would try to understand it. Because Krishna controls everything. The jiva is completely insignificant. Yeah? Like, what was it? The 1/10,000th, the tip of a hair. How much can you do? How much can you actually do? So you need help even, like, to do something bad. Krishna has to arrange the situation. He doesn't want to, but he has to because you want to do it. So, okay, you keep pushing, okay, go on. You will learn later on what to do. So that's my understanding. What do you think? You can speak in the microphone.
The question from another devotee.
Okay, all right. Yes. Oh, there was another question or no? Acha. I think it's 9 o'clock. I'm going to stop here. Please.
I have one small detail.
Yes.
I never heard very.
Again.
You know where you heard that one?
Again, I heard this from another senior devotee.
Do you remember the devotees? I mean, sometimes you can say the name of the devotee and they go, oh, okay.
About the Rakshasas and children is either Chaitanya Charan, the spiritual scientist, or, because sometimes when I prepare, I research various devotees and then I put everything together with my understanding as well. There's either Chaitanya Charan, there's one devotee called Amarendra Das. He's also very, very learned devotee. So this is what when I was researching the lecture on Putana, he shared that devotees have researched the scripture and it came out, I believe it's about 27 or something like that, reasons why Krishna closed his eyes when Putana came to him. You know? And he says that one of the reasons he gave is that Krishna's eyes are like swans, right? And Putana is, what's that? Baki. What's the English name? The English term? I forgot. Crane. Crane, right? Crane? Yeah. And cranes and swans don't like each other because cranes are basically considered lord and swans. So Krishna's eyes, being like swans, they didn't want to take the darshan of this crane demon that's coming to kill Krishna, so they closed their eyes. And another reason that I was given, this mining the scripture again, various commentaries from various acharya, another reason I was given why Krishna closed his eyes was that the eyes knew that whatever Krishna looks at, right, will get the mercy. So they didn't want her to get the mercy because she's such a vile person. So they closed their eyes, they closed themselves, said, no, she's not going to get any mercy to this. So they closed themselves. So she wouldn't get any mercy. She will suffer for what she did. So there were so many things like that. So while I was researching this, I came across that as well, that she was considered to be so low. So it's either him or Chaitanya Charan. Yes. Thank you very much. I'm very grateful for the opportunity. I'm grateful to Lord Krishna for not completely embarrassing me, covering me, allowing me to say something useful and making through the lecture. And I'm grateful to you also for giving me your attention. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Tirtha Prabhu ki. Well, thank you. How did Indra get the opportunity to